And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. I am your host, Wes Tankersley. If you can do me a big favor right now, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcast or Spotify or any of those podcast platforms, please like, share, and review it. If you are watching this on a live show, do a watch party. Help me spread the word about Shaping Success. This is episode 41 with our guest, Pastor Paul Abram. Pastor Paul is currently the pastor at Southern Avenue Missionary Baptist Church in Queen Creek, Arizona. He's a clinical educator as well as a former veteran. Pastor Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you doing, man?
Very good. I'm glad to get to talk to you and hear that voice and, kind of get my audience to hear your message. It's really good to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much. Good to be here.
Yeah. Hey, so let's get started here and kind of talk about your background a little bit. I want to know a little bit about where you grew up and kind of that process of how you ended up where you are today. And we'll talk a little bit more about the pastoring part of it, but there's a whole lot more to the story. So let's get started there.
All right. First, Ricky, for having me on here. I'm a follower of you. I like looking at your content, always motivated. So that's cool. This was an automatic, yes. Background with regards to me. Cool story. My mom and dad basically decided they were going to leave cold Wisconsin in the probably late 50s, early 60s. And they were going to move to warm California because it's the place you want to be. So they loaded up their vehicle and they decided in the summertime that they were going to come through Arizona to California and make that their home. Well, it was summer. The car overheated. At that time, cars it wasn't like an AutoZone here or there. So Dad's like, okay, short of cash. The cars broke down. He went to a local church right there in the neighborhood, talked to the pastor, said, hey, we'd like to rent a room until I could get my car fixed. And the pastor says, well, you know what? We've got a room in the back. You could rent it. And when you get your car fixed, you could be on your way. All right, fine. And that's how they did things in the late 50s, early 60s. Well, a week turned into a month turned into a year. And in 1963, adopted a bouncing baby boy, which was me. So I grew up right here in Phoenix, Arizona, man, Valley of the Sun, born and raised. Went to a local elementary school, Barcelona, went to Alhambra High, went to Glendale Community. And at that point, I joined the military after Glendale Community and went in as to be a Navy SEAL. Me and my good friend, a gentleman, I won't mention his name, but him and I joined. And we both went in at the same time, got into basically the preliminary stages of BUDS. What that means is you're in boot camp. How many of you block it? What's it like to volunteer to be United States Navy SEAL? And him and I are like, okay. So they take you through a little swim thing, run thing, and we both passed, got accepted. At that point in time, when it was time for us to graduate boot camp, he picked what we call A school. And because he chose an A school, he went to that A school, then he went to BUDS. Myself went in as a non-rate, and I went straight to the fleet, worked on an aircraft carrier, and had to wait 1 year before I could come back to even apply for BUDS. Long story short, I ended up with the Marines as a corpsman. He ended up being a Navy SEAL. And with that being said, it was just an incredible career. In retrospect, I don't think God wanted me to be a SEAL. I guess there's a lot that comes with it. Would have probably altered my viewpoint towards life. So I choose love. I don't know. Sovereign God. Let's see. Basically, when I decided to get out of the military, I was just really searching for relationship and where I was at in the process. Basically found my relationship with Jesus as a young man, 36 years old to be exact. Prior to that, I wasn't serving God. And then at that point, me and my wife decided I would go back to school, get my education in Bible theology. Long story short, moved back to Arizona, take care of my mom and dad, and basically pastored the church, or I should say took over senior pastor of the church. And until this day, my father's went home to be with the Lord. My mom left 2012, dad 2015. And I'm left with this blessing with a congregation that's filled with generational people that have served under my father, now serve with me. So that's my story in a nutshell, man. Just a blessed kid growing up in Phoenix, Arizona, adopted by a beautiful family, growing up in a wonderful home, and just serving my country, coming back, doing what God has called me to do. That's it.
That's an amazing story. I mean, it's come full circle, right? You're right back where you started out, and that's beautiful. So you talked a little bit about your dad, and he was the pastor of the church. What kind of influence did he have on you in creating who you are today? Because you said it kind of sounded like you were a little bit, when you came back from the military, it was a little different situation, and then you found God. So talk about that a little bit. How did he influence you into being who you are?
Man, let's just talk about from day one. My father was an influence. His presence was powerful. I'll give you an example, and I know you're an athlete. There's a local barbershop here named Esquire, and it was probably the only barbershop that offered services to black folks, African American. Choose whatever you want, but I'm old school. So it was the only barbershop that would offer services to black folks. And the barbers there were George Weaver and the guy named Lester. Now, the same barbers. That's where I got my first haircut. My point of that is when my dad would walk in there on every other Saturday, his presence was known. Dude, he was a force to be reckoned with. But he never said anything. It was just his presence. His attitude was just powerful, who he was and what he was about. He stood for just moral standards, and he lived what he believed. He did not proclaim to be perfect, but he proclaimed to understand the Bible and the scripture, and he lived what he believed. So he really influenced me. I didn't see him debate with people. I didn't see him argue with people, but he lived what he believed. Even his job, man, he worked for a company organization while pastoring a church called Shamrock Dairy. And Shamrock Dairy, he got on board with them in the 50s. And basically, here's a guy that served in World War II. Yes, World War II. At 57, he probably should have been my grandfather, but he adopted me at an older age. But man, being a World War II veteran, working at the Shamrock Dairy, I mean, he was a trailblazer, man, and he made no. He was one of those cats that said, if you want something, you work for it. If you want to know about something, you study for it. He was just one of those guys that he would point out the evident issues of life, but he never allowed that to limit who he was. Matter of fact, one of his last major campaigns was to build the building that I pastor in. And literally, it was the early 80s. And he preached a sermon every Sunday, where there's a vision, there will be provision. And he just believed that you just rolled up your sleeves and you got in and do what you needed to do. So his influence on me and the people around me was just powerful as this positive, go do it, make it happen, don't cry, suck it up, buttercup. He was that guy. But on the flip side, being a pastor, he was also empathetic. He was passionate about his life, but he was that guy, man. And I just believe that those core values that he put in me, we can't whine, we can't cry. If you're going to make something happen, make it happen. Once again, his sermon he used to preach building that building was, when God gives a vision, he will also create provision. And he just operated that. God was bigger in every circumstance. So he's definitely was an influence on me and those around me. Even his job, check this out, this is really cool. Shamrock Dairy, once again, here locally, when I was ahead of his estate, and I had to call Shamrock Dairy to put an end to his retirement. And the lady says, wow, I was hoping you called. He had been the oldest recipient to be receiving retirement, but I had numerous calls where people want to reach out to you. And I'm like, really? And I didn't know what it was going to be about. And a few of the people did call me like, hey, in 1968, your father shared the gospel with me, or in 1972, your dad helped me out in this situation. Man, when you leave a legacy like that, while I thought he was a rock star, man, he was a rock star even when he wasn't in front of his family. He had a consistent attitude about his life and what he did, even at his. So, bro, that's my hero, straight up.
That's an amazing story because, so many of us grow up that way. I feel lucky to have a father that was kind of that type of influence on me as well. But there are kids who grow up without that. So it's great that you got that chance to have that kind of connection with your father. And I really love the fact that people were reaching out to you in order to talk about that with you. That's got to feel really good.
Yeah, it's cool.
So let's talk a little bit about what you do for your day job, because I know that you're a pastor and that's probably an everyday thing. That probably takes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But you also have another job where you actually work in the medical field. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, matter of fact, long term is I'm a medical device representative. And cool thing, about 12 years ago, I was working I've always been in the medical industry. I was a corpsman in the military. I was called 8404. So when I got off the aircraft carrier, I struck for a job what do the SEALs need? They need corpsmen, but that corpsman worked well for me to be with the Marines. So I've always been in the medical field. So about 12 years ago, I was working in dialysis, and I was basically, I oversaw about 51, 52 dialysis units with regards to vascular access issues. Well, periodically, I would get sales rep coming in wanting to share with me what their latest new cool thing was. And there was this device out there called the Hero Graph. And I needed this because I wanted to help some of our patients. So being an advocate, I called a group in, and next thing you know, they're meeting with me. And we just really just hit it off. They had a product, a device that I really needed. They treated me with the utmost respect. So, one day we were joking, and they said, "Hey, why don't you come work for us?" I'm like, "Yeah, you'll have to pay me double the amount that I make now," because I had a cool job, man. Got my little company business card, have my own office. Matter of fact, my office was my old boss's office. Like, she used to make me nervous. Now I'm like, this is my office. And, I was just sort of full of myself. And so 12 years ago, 12 and a half years ago, I was on the beach of all places, on vacation, Coronado Island. Matter of fact, I'm out there with my son. We're watching the SEALs train because I'm still living the dream, even though there's no way I'm going to be a SEAL. But we're out there watching the SEALs train. And my phone goes off. And I said, "Hey, this is Paul." And it was a guy named Roman. He said, "Hey, Paul, Roman from Hemisphere." I said, "What's up?" He goes, "We're going to double what you get paid, and we want you to come work for us." I said, "What?" I looked at my wife. I'm like, "They're going to double my pay." She's like, "Take it." And so I got on board in medical device. And I, right off the bat, bro, became a representative of this device. And, man, I tell you what, it was the first time I got a commission check. I thought everybody I understood salary, and that was fearful to me. I understood people getting the hourly wage. That was normal to me. But when I got my first commission check on selling our device, and at that time, I think the device was $2,400. And I remember I think I sold 5 of them, and I got almost $1,000. And I was like, this is real. And man, there was no turning back, brother. When you talk about incentive pay, oh man, but I had to really get myself self-educated. I really had to understand. I have spoken to doctors before, but not at a level that I had to come across with authority, that I had the knowledge base. I had to almost come to them as if I was their peer. Well, bro, my education is Bible and theology. Dialysis I learned on the way, and basically being overseen in a managed position, though dialysis, I didn't speak to physicians in an imperative way. So I had to really prepare myself, but man, it became fun where I was going into USC, Stanford, USC, Duke, and I was in the OR with physicians. Mind you, I can't touch the patients, but I instruct them how to put our device in. I articulate and communicate the whole process. And then it got to the point where I was speaking in front of physicians, in front of people, in front of nurses, in front of technicians. I was putting, bigger dinner meetings together. And still at this present time, this is pre-COVID. Now that we are in this COVID situation, I'm doing a lot of, of course, Teams meeting and what we're doing right now, and still get the same high, same thrill. I was up this morning, 4:30, working with a physician in Chicago via the rep that was in the room, talking them through the process. So, man, my job is a blast. Medical device rep with a clinical education background now. So I clinically educate, talk, and just bring this medical device to the table, and been a part of introducing some other new devices that are going to be changing the way we do medicine in certain parts of the nation. So, dude, I got the primo best job.
And I like that because you're able to, one, you get to help those people do that, but you also get a chance. I think I've heard you talk a couple times about praying with the individuals who you're helping sometimes and getting to minister to them as well. So you've kind of got the best of both worlds. You get to do everything that you want to do at the same time.
Well, that's the point of that platform, man. I asked God give him at one point in Southwest Airlines, I almost had 1 million points, from flying so much. So yeah, why not? God opened up that pulpit. Why not, man? I've had the greatest conversations in the plane to the OR to, just out for dinner. Absolutely. Just living what I believe, bro. That's all.
Yeah. And we're going to talk a little bit about this now. So I found you on TikTok. I got on there in February of last year, and it was just interesting because you start getting kind of popped into it. And not necessarily, like you see a pastor on there and you follow a pastor because, you're interested in that kind of thing and whatever. And it just kind of melds everything together. And then I started listening to some of the verses you're talking about, some of the scriptures you're talking about. And it's more than just that. And I really love the way that you relate everything that you do to life in general, because that's really what the Bible's about. It's helping people to understand how to use that in their life. And you do a great job at that. What can you talk about? You have this I Choose Love kind of movement is what I like to call it. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why you chose to go with that?
Oh, absolutely. If we're going to be very transparent, corporate America can be a tough environment. The world in general can be a tough environment. You just have so many things coming at you and so many personalities and so many different people. So let's ask a question, two different parts here. The TikTok thing. Well, November of last year, one of my kids turned me on to TikTok. I didn't know what a TikTok. Matter of fact, I got made fun of the first month because I would enunciate it the wrong way. I would call it Tic Tac or whatever the case may be. And, my kid's like, Dad, it's TikTok. I'm like, okay, cool. So I was in Wisconsin, believe it or not, on business. And so she sent me this TikTok video of this kid who was in the back of his dad's pickup, and he was backing up. And as he was backing up, he was making that noise, beep, beep. And the closer he got to the garage door, he was like, beep, 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 beep. And dude, it was super corny, but I laughed. And remember, I'm a road warrior. I'm usually somewhere in the nation Tuesday through Thursday. I go do my job. I grab something to eat. I go to my hotel. I call my whole family. And then I'm there in my hotel. There's only so much TV you could watch. So here's this TikTok in this video. So I started going through TikTok, and I started like, this is pretty interesting, man. And I'm like looking at what kind of folks are on it and what they're listening to and and so I made my first video, and it was more of a motivational video than anything. I was just like, I'll throw it out there. And I think I got 2 likes, maybe 3 views. And I went, all right, cool. And I just kept doing it. But here's the second part of your question that I'm going to answer, the I Choose Love part. I think it was a few weeks later, and I'm not quite sure. It might have been a couple months. I was flying out of Texas, and I remember being in my black scrubs, and I remember just all of a sudden getting my phone, and I look in the camera, and I said, hey, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly, but I said, hey, I love you, man. Oh, I don't care about ethnicity. I don't care about that. I love you. I think I said race. I don't think I said ethnicity. I think somebody corrected me. They said race is something you run. Ethnicity is what you are. So I said, I don't care about race. I love you. And that right there, man, did something crazy. That started like, I woke up the next day and that thing was like, boom, 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 boom. I still didn't understand what TikTok was. I didn't understand algorithms. I didn't even know at that moment that you could talk over 15 seconds. That just shows you what I didn't know about TikTok. But that video right there let me know that for the most part, people want to reciprocate love. For the most part, people want to be respected. For the most part, people want to be treated as they want, they want to treat you in a certain way, and they want to be treated a certain way. And it just came to the point where, what was I going to stand on? I'm a pastor. Yes. I'm corporate America. Yes. I have some type of ability to motivate people. Yes. But what is it that I can do? And if you remember, November of 2019 seems like eons ago. Because we've been through now pandemic. We went through the, whoever that was assassinated in the Middle East. I don't want to minimize a death, but I can't remember. We went through, people thought it was going to be World War III. And this was all on TikTok. Kids, like, what are you going to do now? It's end times. But what I'm saying is this, that people needed to hear somebody say, it's going to be okay. And in the process, I choose love. But by the way, this happened to me today. I choose love. Oh, your response is this. I choose love. Oh, wait a minute. I got to, my very best. I want to do my very best. But in that, I better choose love. So I kept using real life to flow into this message saying, I am committing myself to I choose love. Matter of fact, I went as far. I was in Denver airport, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I wore this shirt that it says, oh my Lord, what does it say? Oh, it's something to the point that love thou neighbor. And I would wear that in the airport, and people would call me out on that shirt all day. I love your shirt. But what they were doing is, I'm going to keep you. And I had to be accountable, man, on the plane. I had to be accountable for the person who would sit next to me that might not have been the ideal individual to sit next to. I had to be accountable for the Uber driver that drove by me and left me where I was at. I had to be accountable for the hotel that might have didn't get my reservation right. All of a sudden, hashtag I Choose Love took on an accountability level. But with TikTok, it took on a situation where I could reach out to you and somebody else and say, you know what? It's not about politics. It's not about race. I choose love and I love you.
And that's the amazing thing about that, because that's what drew me to it. The I Choose Love part of that whole situation kind of came to me. I was listening to another Marine. His name is Chad Wright, who kind of does the same thing. He's into these extreme sports and races and things like that. And he was trying to train to be a Navy SEAL as well. But he was talking about that when we had all the George Floyd stuff going down and all that stuff. A lot of people felt really negative about that situation. And they asked him what his viewpoint was on that. And he said, this is the only thing that matters. And he said, the Bible verse that love thy neighbor as you love yourself. And that's really what it is. It's choosing to look past that and only love the person as an individual. So that's what kind of drew me to that message.
Amen. Bottom line, brother.
Yep. So thank you for bringing that message. Can you talk to us a little bit about your church? So like you said, it's the church that your father was a pastor at. I've kind of watched a couple videos on Facebook, because a lot of times we have to be, we can't be in a church right now because of the whole situation. How has that affected the way that you have done your service from here now? How are you doing your services during these times?
So, of course, we do our services online through Zoom. And that's been interesting because this church has been under the same ministry, under the same family since the early 60s, 64 to be exact. This building since the early 80s. So for us not to be able to meet, now mind you, I don't have, it's very interesting. I don't have, and that we can talk about that too. I don't have a very big congregation. If I were to get 100 people to show up in a building that holds 500 people on any given Sunday, I would be. But my average attendance is probably 50 to 60 people, because I'm very, I might wear a pair of Levi's and a button-down shirt, and I'm very informal. I'm nothing like my father, and I'm more of a teacher. And so this pandemic's been hard because we are very close and very, an intimate congregation. But however, we have lost 2 members because of COVID. I mean, you do the numbers. When you got 50 people and you lose 2, that affects a family, and that's our family. So we've been meeting online. It's interesting, but I'm a very animated. While this is what we got, I'm really cool. To see our service is to see it in person, because, man, I have been known to walk on pews and, do crazy stuff, and I'm very animated. I get really, I don't want to use the word fired up, because I think that's more baseball or football. I just take you into the story, man. I will take you there. So I think that while the internet's been a blessing to keep us connected, it limits me in my animation. But our church is just a loving church where they inspire the I Choose Love moment, because there's a lot of people in our church that are generational. They're either their parents served under my father or their grandparents and then some. And it's just a really super big family. Very loving. I think if I have a dream for it, if it will grow, I would like it to be more multicultural. I'm African American, obvious. Well, I'm half black, half Mexican. I was adopted, but my wife is Mexican and white, and our church reflects mostly African American. But I would love it to be multicultural. But they express love, so when you visit, man, you feel at home. It's a cool church. It is a cool church. And it's in a very interesting neighborhood, very economically challenged neighborhood. And I just wish we could do more to just bless and get back in the room. But we're going to start by being in that church and that building on the Sunday right before Christmas. And so it's a very, very cool church. And so, my phone would ring now.
That's all
and
good.
Guess what? It's spam. Oh, I hate that.
That happens all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, bro, it's just a wonderful church, a great legacy. But in this pandemic, what we're doing here, God has let me understand that I have this small core group that loves me, but God is opening up a bigger stage where I can speak into people's lives. And while I am a nonconformist to some degree in certain things, not when it comes to doctrine, but things, why are you not wearing a suit? Like, why do I got to wear a suit? And trust me, I'm like that in corporate America too. When we have our national sales meetings, I'm the guy that tries to push the envelope and not be a conformist. But man, this platform right here, what we're doing is just, it's, I've got that core group, but God is doing greater things in a broader scale in this.
Well, it's great that you have found those different ways to promote that and make sure that other people are seeing that. And I think that, you talk about having, maybe 50 people in your church at one time, but I feel like you have this bigger church than what, and I'm sure you know that, but you think about all the people who watch your videos and the message that you're bringing. You have to think of it that you're in a bigger room. And I think that I think you realize that for sure.
Oh, well, there's a scripture that says that, we're many members, but one body. It's beyond the wall. See, that's what it's really about. It's beyond the wall. So yeah, absolutely. And I praise God for that. I praise God for that.
And I'm that nonconformist type as well, because, the church that I typically attend when it's open is, well, I'm going to a different one, but I grew up in Calvary Chapels. That's where I met my wife, and it's the same kind of thing. My pastor is always up there in a pair of jeans and maybe a sport coat every once in a while, but it's pretty laid back. It's not one of those things where they wouldn't come and show up possibly in some flip-flops, So it's like we talked about. It doesn't matter what you look like, who you are. It's the message and where it comes from.
Well, bro, check this out. Very cool story. So when I first, at 37, 36, I'm in school, I'm studying the Bible. I would get on the radio and I'd listen to this cat called Raul Reese. Now, this was like Cheech and Chong, refined, sharing scriptures. And I didn't know who Raul Reese was. I didn't know what a Calvary Chapel was. I hadn't a clue. But I know this cat. I'd be on the radio driving down, the PCH, man. There's the ocean on my left, listening to Raul Reese. And bro, I used to think this cat's cool. As I started developing my walk in Christianity, I realized what Calvary Chapels are. Matter of fact, I work with a lot of Calvary Chapel folks, but I think it was those guys that gave me the breakthrough vibe with the whole, hey, surfers basically found Jesus and they're running the operation. So those are the guys that gave me the ability to you can wear jeans. It's okay. You're under grace. So I love me some Calvary Chapel, man. I love it. And all those cats.
Yeah, it's a great one. I really enjoy going to it. The church that we go to now is a little bit different, but it's pretty much along the same lines. So you get that same vibe, that same feeling. You feel like you're actually sitting in a church with someone who understands you and goes through the same.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm holier than thou up here on this pulpit talking to you in a suit and tie, and
exactly.
So
exactly. It's all about conversation, brother. That's all.
Yep. Speaking of that, I really enjoyed this conversation. Can you tell us a little bit more about where we can find you? Because I know you're on TikTok, but there's also some other places. You have a website, things like that. Go ahead and tell our listeners where they can find you if they want to look into you a little more.
Absolutely. And, I don't know anything by memory. Between my wife and my sister, they handle it. But if you go to Southern Ave, Missionary Baptist Church, you look on our website, you can look on our Facebook. We are, and of course, TikTok and Instagram, people keep asking me to do YouTube and podcast and all kinds. But folks, I just figured out TikTok. So for me to do all that, it would take a little bit more, pastoring and working a full-time job. It's a little tough. So eventually, if you can just find me on TikTok, go to my link tree. I think that everything's put in there that you can sort of find where we're at, navigate and see what we're about. And we'll have some things to come when it comes to podcasts. And, I'm even putting out what do you call it? It's sort of marriage counseling, but without having your marriage blow up. It's sort of a fine-tuned tune-up for folks that say, hey, you know what? We don't need counseling, but yeah, let's all talk about it and see what we can do. We're going to be bringing that out here soon in 21. So, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I will make sure that I link in the show notes where they can find you too. So you'll have that in there if they listen to the podcast, and they'll be able to find you as well.
Cool.
So before we get to the last question, and this is the last question I ask everyone, we kind of do a last question sponsor. So our last question sponsor this week is PodSpout, the only app you'll need to promote your podcast. It's free, but you can also use code SUCCESS at checkout to get a 10% discount off of any paid plan. Go to podspout.com to do that. So Pastor Paul, it's been great to have you on the show. I'm glad that you had the time to take some time and invest in our audience and help them to understand each other. We have one last question that we ask every single guest. Success is defined differently to every single person. And, it may be money, fast cars. It may be reaching many people. How would you define success?
This is it's an interesting question. I am in the process of right now re-educating myself. And I'm looking at the world from many, many perspectives. I think success is being in a position to steadily keep consuming and learning and growing so that you may be effective to others in your life. We, corporate America, am I bringing value to people? And I want to, if you will, create this platform that everything that I'm bringing to the table, may it be TikTok, Instagram, may it be in our pulpit, may it be in our community, may it be my neighbor, am I bringing value? And so to me, that's successful. Are you bringing value? And can you safely say that you are, I'll put it this way, Jesus said it best. I didn't come to be served, I came to serve. And I want to be in a position that I may serve people and honor them and respect them and love them. I'll leave you with a very interesting story. I was at this particular DaVita unit that I mentioned earlier. I was moving up the chain of command. There was a gentleman that was going to interview me, and I remember sitting in this chair, and he said, "Hey, can you tell us what you felt success was?" And I said, "Well, to serve others." He said, "Oh, did you ever read the book called The Servant Leader?" I said, "Yeah, it's the Bible." He looked at me like, "Are you messing with me? There really is a book." Well, I didn't know it. I really was referring to the Bible. And I still stick to that. How may I bring Wes value? How may I serve you? How may I serve each other? That's success. And in that, I just believe what you sow is what you reap. I believe everything somehow God takes care of. But all I want to do is just serve others. That's success.
Well, I think that you're doing a great job and you're bringing a great message to a lot of people. So continue doing that. And I just want to thank you again for taking the time to be on the show, and wish you nothing but luck in those endeavors. So thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone. Well, that's the end of the show. I wanted to say thank you for tuning in. Again, if you could please help me by sharing, reviewing this on the podcast platforms and sharing the videos. It will help me to grow this so that we can reach more people. Until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.